Good evening. The regular meeting of the Annapolis City Council for Monday, October the 10th will be called to order at 7 p.m. At this time, would everyone willing and able please stand for the invocation given by Alderman Arnett, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me ask for a moment of silence as we contemplate the business of the evening. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
Present.
Present. Present.
Present.
Present. Present.
Present. We're all
Mr.
present tonight.
Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the first item?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I think we're going to ask that the appointment of Mr. Dillinger be postponed until we get before the housing. Okay. Okay.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'm,
Is there a second?
I didn't understand. We're going to approve it and then amend it?
Put it on the agenda.
They're already on the agenda, so when we get to the item, there's on the
I see. All right. Thank you. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, on the agenda are ceremonial items. The first is Catherine Rollison, Executive Director of Central Chesapeake Region, ARC, and then Chief Charles Steele.
All right. If I could have, well, I understand we don't have the citation with us, so give us 1 second and we'll have somebody go it. Let's skip this and we'll come back to it. Since somebody texts, I apologize. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
I think it's the Chief Charles Steele Award is the next item, unless that has to do with the citation too. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
My pleasure.
Just a little background on this award. Last year, the Public Safety Committee wanted us to establish an award where we recognize one individual in the fire service each year that's done something to improve the operation of the Annapolis Fire Department. So we named the award after Chief Charles Steele, who was the department's first fire chief, who served from 1964 to 1987. And Chief Steele is credited with laying the foundation for the Annapolis Fire Department. So last year was the first year for the award, and Deputy Chief Simmons was the first recipient. This year's recipient is firefighter Colt Carter. And Colt has done a lot of work with us improving our IT system. He has developed programs for us to do testing and training online. He's done a lot of development programs to help us track records, to help improve our ISO rating. So he's done a lot to help us from a technology standpoint to improve the department. And some of his training programs that has improved firefighter safety. So it's a great honor for me to present to firefighter Colt Carter this year's Chief Charles Steele Public Safety.
Well, thank you, Chief. It really is a pleasure. This is our second year, and the entrants are always very competitive because we have awesome staff doing great things. So this year, Officer Carter, his credentials were a step above. I mean, we're in the 21st century because of his technology, and most of it's done on his own time. So we want to say thank you and congratulations.
Just want to say congratulations. They've said it all.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
You want to say anything?
No, I think the accolades are terrific. Just I'll keep up the good work, I guess. And
Found the citation, Kate Roslin. Rollison. Apologize. And I know you too. I'm sorry. They caught me off guard by not having it. So, thank you. All right, we have a city council citation to honor you for the work that you've done, and I'm going to read it. It's signed by myself and all the members of the city council. On behalf of the citizens of the city of Annapolis, we are pleased to confer upon you this city council citation in recognition of your ongoing dedication to the city as the executive director of the Central Chesapeake Region ARC. We acknowledge your retirement on September 30th after serving since 1976 when you started changing minds and influencing policy. You organized and facilitated self-advocacy and self-help groups, testified before state legislators, and trained direct care workers while raising funds and serving as executive director for 2 chapters of the ARC. We applaud you for being called a maverick in the world of intellectual and developmental disabilities by your colleagues. Your passion, your call to service is both respected and appreciated by this council, and we honor you tonight for your work and contributions to the community and wish you much success in your future endeavors. Given under our hand and the great seal of the city of Annapolis on this 10th day of October, 2016.
This is really wonderful. I thank all of you. I am a resident of the city of Annapolis. I still want to serve on your Housing and Community Services Committee because that's what it's all about, is community service and helping to give people a hand up. That's the passion. That's what we all should be doing. And I thank you very much for the recognition. It's not about me, it's about all of us.
Mr. City Attorney, would you please present our next item?
Mr. Mayor, next is petitions, reports, and communications.
Is there any audit person that would like to present a report? Right. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Next, Mr. Mayor, comments by the general public.
All right. During comments by the general public, you can testify on anything that's not already scheduled for a public hearing this evening. So if you came to talk about absentee ballot applications, general obligation bonds, those public hearings will be immediately following this one. And the first 3 people signed up to speak are Ms. Bronson, Judy Jones, and Joe Tierney. Mr. Bronson, I apologize. And if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Stu Bronson. I reside at 14 Overford Dam, Maryland. I would like to bring something to your attention. I'd like to read something to you. This is an article from the Washington Post entitled "Traffic Woes Gain Notice." To the people who live near the end of it or on it, Forest Drive seems like Anne Arundel County's longest dead-end road. It's the only way to get onto the Annapolis Neck Peninsula. It's the only way to get off the Annapolis Neck Peninsula. That route was fine just a few decades ago when only quiet farms were at the end of Forest Drive and along its main forks. But in the last 25 years, development has boomed along the Forest Drive corridor. Today, 50,000 people live along that same corridor. And when a good number of them are trying to come or go at the same time, say your typical rush hour, the result is a gridlock of epic proportions. Even minor accidents can bring everything to a standstill. In the fall, when a car knocked over a telephone pole in a pre-dawn accident, Forest Drive and the city of Annapolis were backed up until early afternoon. The corridor's problems have been a recurring issue in dealings of the county government and Annapolis City Council over the last year or two as developers snatch up the remaining parcels of land off Forest Drive. But now city and county officials have promised a joint study of the corridor's traffic and environmental concerns, a step forward for frustrated residents who have agitated for a ban on development in the area. Everyone is coming to the realization that you have to plan differently when you're on a peninsula, said an officer of the Annapolis Neck Peninsula Federation. There's no single culprit to blame for the peninsula's overdevelopment, said an alderman. The counties allowed building to go on, the cities allowed building to go on. Everybody's been turning a blind eye to this over the years. And as more have moved out there, Forest Drive, which once wound through a peaceful namesake forest, I believe the forested road that Mr. Hyatt once referred to, became surrounded by subdivisions and strip shopping centers. And although the road was long ago widened to 4 lanes, it couldn't absorb all the new traffic. In recent years, Annapolis has been extending its borders along Forest Drive, and like many municipalities, it's annexed several neighboring parcels of land to increase its own size and its tax base. Many residents have blamed the city's annexation habits for encouraging overdevelopment. For builders, cleaving themselves to Annapolis has proven beneficial. The city generally makes water and sewer lines more accessible than the county and has not required the impact fees that Anne Arundel asks of developers. But city officials say they allow newly annexed landholders to construct only as many buildings as county zoning would have allowed. And just because they have adopted the land, they say, doesn't mean they'll let developers build to its limits. Zoning, they say, will be considered separate of annexation. This article goes on. The thing that I'd like to point out to you is that this article is from June 27th, 1996, in the Washington Post. I would like to just briefly read one other item. Crystal Spring developers say they aren't going anywhere. Developers of the project told the Capitol on Wednesday they are meeting with the city's Department of Planning and Zoning officials as they prepare to resubmit a forest conservation plan in the fall. The developers say opponents may be trying to wait them out. Not one of our courses of actions, according to Mr. Brains, is to walk away. It's a matter of who can outlast, and we can outlast. This is from 2016. Sounding a little familiar. I'd like to read just one other brief item. Annapolis will delay development. Peninsula has promised action on road problems. Annapolis Neck Peninsula residents claimed a tiny victory yesterday in their fight to keep the city of Annapolis from swallowing whole tracts for developers. Although the city council had annexed another 140 acres on Monday, city officials agreed to halt development on the properties until traffic problems on Forest Drive are addressed. The developers, however, the annexed land, say the temporary halt is not a problem, according to Alan J. Hyatt, an Annapolis lawyer representing the developers for the Chrisland Group. This is from, November 6, 1996. Sounding more and more familiar. We have, at the very least, a 20-year pattern of behavior going on the part of city officials, county council, the mayors, the developers, the attorneys. You have now the opportunity to truly resolve these issues by taking advantage of the decision to postpone action on Resolution R2116 concerning violations of the Catherine Properties Annexation Agreement. Mr. Mayor, I would strongly urge you to have the appropriate city officials engage in meaningful conversations and negotiations regarding Crystal Spring. I would also urge you to appoint a citizen observer of these negotiations and discussions to make sure that the actual concerns of the people of Annapolis are heard and are being dealt with. Mr. Mayor, if you don't do that, I would urge the City Council to take action and to once and for all, after 20 years, and I can cite you articles that go back even further, back into the late 80s, mid-80s, to do the right thing, stand up to the developers in a meaningful way, and not just kick the can down the road as we've been doing for the past 20 years, at least. Maybe Mr. Brains isn't going away, he and his developer friends, but either are we. We live here. This is our city. We live in Annapolis. We are Annapolitans. And when the developers go away with the money that they've obtained from the city, we are left to deal with decades worth of problems in their wake. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming out tonight. I always enjoy hearing articles about what the city was like from the past. They do that in parking frequently. We'll talk about the parking problem downtown and quote a story from 1975. So if you could share a copy of those, I would appreciate reading it.
Well, it is indeed interesting, but it becomes more than interesting if the city and the council and the mayor would actually truly address the problems, and that, as I said, not just kick the can down the road again. The parking problems, kicking the can down the road. My impression of the city's ability to even manage projects is really been formed by what happened to the Market House and what's happening with some of the vacant property downtown in the city of Annapolis. It does not appear that the city is able to manage a project of any particular size and to imagine for a moment that they can deal with the development along the Forest Drive corridor as it's projected to be is just staggering. Thank you.
Before you leave, sir, to answer your question, you're right. The Market House was a travesty. The city lost millions of dollars in that. But since then, we've shown good management. The bulkhead project downtown was built not only all on schedule, but $1 million under budget. In terms of some of the other private property, we're turning around 110 Compromise Street. The old Stevens building's now a Mission Barbecue. The Pocket Park's getting built. So I think there's a number of high-profile vacancies that are now filled. Just wanted to share that with you.
Well, thank you. And I would argue that the nature of the Market House has changed so significantly that it no longer really represents the city of Annapolis, but rather the inside of a mall someplace. But thank you for sharing the information, Mr. Mayor.
Not a problem. And the last point, as you alluded to, on the waiting game. And, it's been rumored a lot and everything else about my election, what it stood for, and what the developers may want to do, meaning they would not like to see me in this office so they could work with the new administration, but I don't plan on going anywhere, so if their key is just to wait until after the election, it's not going to work for them.
Well, that's good to hear, particularly since we have all seen and heard your commitment to opposing Crystal Spring, as well as similar developments. I'm very happy to hear that you reinforce that opposition right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Judy Jones and Joe Tierney.
Good evening. My name is Judy Jones, and I live at 10 Fleet Street, and I might add, where there's no parking whatsoever. I seem to always come before this committee talking about parking, but I will try again. This is in reference to Alderman Budge's Resolution 3216, and part of that resolution is to remove the graduated fine structures for repeat violations, adding a multiplier for repeat violations, and so forth. I am really opposed to removing the escalating fines. This is to quote, not going back as far as 1996, but residential fines have been part of the city law since 2014, and that refers to a $40 fine, but never implemented. So that's 3 years that a $40 fine has not been implemented. Now, I got my information from the Capitol, so please correct me if I'm wrong. The fine, I believe now, for first violation is $35. If somebody would correct me if I'm wrong on that. Okay. Then the escalating fines have been approved since 2007, but the city didn't have the technology at the time to implement it. Now we have the technology with SP plus parking, and I'm just wondering why the city, perhaps not the city, I shouldn't say that, but why Alderman Budge, who is not here right now, but why he would like to see the escalating fine scale removed. I am really in favor of that escalating fine scale. Cornhill Street, which is the street I try to park on but usually fail miserably, there are 7 cars right now that are parked there. They have been parked there all day, and I have called the city about it. Last year I reported the same cars parked here, and I must admit that as of October 1st, I have seen these same cars move after 2 hours. Now that's a real plus, and I really have to commend SP for doing that. But I think the same cars return the next day. They park there for 2 hours or 3, and then they move their cars elsewhere. Now, my question is, am I to interpret 2-hour parking per day, per district means 2 hours per day? It doesn't mean that you can hop to Prince George Street, to King George, and so forth, and park there for another 2 hours. So I think it's the same people. These are owners of restaurants downtown. These are bus boys. These are waitresses. These are managers. These are cooks. It's the same people all the time. And I really think an escalating fine scale would penalize those people. We're not talking about tourists. We're not talking about other residents. We're talking about people who park every single day. To the extent that they even put up their sunscreen because they know they're going to be there for more than 8 hours. That's what I'm concerned with. And I do ask that perhaps you reconsider, keeping the escalating fine scale for at least a year to see if it works. If it doesn't, fine. Then we'll go back to the way it is now. But to say, it's been in effect since 2007, but never implemented, let's give it a chance just to see if it's going to work, because it's the same people. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me up there? Perfect. My name is Joe Tierney. I live at 85 East Street here in Annapolis, Maryland, with my lovely wife, Eleanor, and you've probably heard from her in the past. So I come to you today, and I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. And the good news is I'm not going to talk about parking, even though I echo Judy Jones's opinion about what she just stated. What I want to talk about briefly, and I'll try to keep it to 3 minutes, is an article, an op-ed that I put into the Capital Gazette back on September the 1st that talked about hotel tax. I have 2 questions. I want to do a little backup, and then I'll re-ask them again. So question number 1 is, and Gary Ellison and I have had some conversation about this issue in the past, so if you can recall, Gary, there was a point in time where we had a back and forth on the phone, a good back and forth, a good dialogue, and the upshot of the matter was that Ordinance 40-16, which was being introduced by Alderman Finlayson, Payon, and Arnett, was being put on a sidebar for the time being because of a potential conflict between it and the pending state level legislation. So I need an update on that, or I'd like to, not knowing if this is interactive. And 2, and more importantly, which is the point of my op-ed on September the 1st, why can't we today, with even out the current ordinance being regulated or changed, do a better job or more robust job at identifying and collecting hotel taxes on all of these properties that qualify as a hotel or a hotel room? So a little backup, if you have a pen hand, you just jot down September the 1st in the Capital Gazette, where I wrote an editorial that talked about the Anne Arundel County Code, and quite specifically 4-6105311, mentioning the definition of a hotel. That's never been challenged. A hotel is, by county definition, and I'll just cite it quickly, it includes a motel, inn, bed and breakfast, home, or inn, rooming, or guest house, or a tourist home. There are a lot of these places in the city of Annapolis that I know my colleague Corey is trying to excite the community and the council, and I think he's done an admirable job at it, about going and getting them registered and inspected. Thank you, Corey. However, my larger overwhelming issue is to try to put money in the coffers of Annapolis. I don't think you guys would mind getting $400,000. That was my gut calculation that I did on the back of a napkin that tallied the approximate amount that I came up with when you ran the numbers of how many Airbnbs there were over the course of a year, and being vacant 20% of the time, and us collecting 80% of the value. Us, as in the city of Annapolis, retains 80% of the value of that which tax has been collected, if I'm not mistaken. So running those numbers, knowing that there's already a system in place to collect some of those, but I think more properties need to be identified. My second question is, why isn't there more of a program in place now that goes and identifies those properties, notifies them that they're due a tax, collects that tax, and puts that money in our coffers? So if again, that, and the first question is, where is this conflict is at this time between the state senator known as John Astle and this county and our city? So whoever wants to respond. Thank
Alderman
you.
Arnett?
Thank you. First of all, I wish we really could have a forum for a dialogue. We listen to people come up and they ask questions and make pleas, but we're supposed to be here passive and really not respond. And we don't want to be argumentative or defensive, but we really don't have a good forum for a dialogue. So I will answer your questions the best I can.
Thank you.
We're waiting to see the legislation from Senator Astle for a number of reasons, not the least of which is he promises to make it state law that these owners of all of these different kinds of entities will have to register, and they will have to collect hotel tax and sales tax. And we need to see, first of all, if it's the state law, then it has precedent over the city law. We may need to embellish a little bit, but, oh, my time is up.
I kept it under 3.
So I think that we're waiting to see. I personally had some issues which I had asked the former city attorney, Mr. Leahy, about in terms of our ability legally to enforce the 1 unit on the block face, prohibition of more than 1 on a block face, recognizing that that's in city code for legitimate bed and breakfasts right now. And so this whole exercise sparked a debate on that, and then unfortunately the governor stole Mr. Leahy away from us, so I'm still waiting for the answer to that question. But I think that this is not an issue that's going away. We have fairly constant reminders, not only from you and Corey, but other people in the community wondering about the fairness of these things. And if the state fails to do something, then we, in my mind, will take it up again.
Yeah, if we could. We should just set a limit on it because, in my opinion, and again, I appreciate the back and forth because it would be even more beneficial to have it back and forth. But just, again, give me 30 more seconds, that it would be prudent, perhaps, to put a time limit on it, whether it's a day or a week or a month or a year. Work to that date so that it puts pressure on my neighbor as well,
yes,
on Fleet Street, to get that legislation passed.
Would require everyone, whether it's Airbnb, VRBO, whatever, to register. And there are some life safety issues there. We want to make sure that the buildings are safe. And then when they register, they would need to use that registration number on any soliciting ads or whatever. And then we would know if they're getting customers. And when we see ones that don't have the registration, we would know that either they're not following the code or they're not registered, and then we can catch up with those people. I must say, in my own ward, I was very surprised at the number of people who rent out their house or their room on an occasional basis. I mean, it was really a surprising number of people. So it's not like this is something that's a rare occasion.
Yeah.
It's happening a lot.
It is, and especially if you look at the Airbnb ratios, just on a very modest and conservative scale, it's it approaches $500,000 that we're losing. So time is of the essence, and if I can come back to this in 2 or 3 weeks to check up on you, or to check up, or miss, certainly.
May I add, I've asked our city attorney to go back and look at the provisions that we had outlined. Just as a little bit of background, we worked for about a year to try to address the concerns that were brought to us. One being the public safety piece, because, you know, the folks that are using Airbnb are very transient, and so there is no accountability. We knew that realtors were advertising, buy a house in this community and you can rent it out as an Airbnb and make lots of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole tenure of the communities are starting to change. We saw and heard about communities all over the country, from New York to California, that were trying to address this very issue. And so getting together with members of the industry, we thought we were trying to address the concerns. But it seems we've raised an awful lot of other concerns, and people who have short-term rentals felt that we were trying to attack them and to eliminate their ability to do short-term rentals. So I want to be very clear that that was not our intent, nor is it our intent to hinder that type of business, but solely to address the concerns evolving around Airbnbs. We learned from our Department of Neighborhood Environmental Programs, it doesn't exist anymore, there are over 160 Airbnbs in the city of Annapolis, 7 miles. Who would have thought, you know, that there were that many rentals? So it is something we're going to have to grapple with. I haven't, you know, we haven't trashed the legislation, but I've asked Gary to look at what it says, how it impacts B&Bs, how it impacts other short-term rentals, as well as the state law. Now, from what I understood, the senator hadn't drafted his legislation yet, and he was kind of looking to ours. So I'm not sure where that is at the state level. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your concern and your steadfastness. But I think that we're all saying the same thing. And I think we all agree that the county has given us the wherewithal to impose this tax. We just now have to make sure that we can follow through on it. And if there's anything I can do as an owner of a bed and breakfast or the co-owner of a bed and breakfast, feel free to increase that dialogue with me personally or with my wife. So we will see you soon.
We'll let you know when we meet again.
Thank you.
That was the last person signed up to speak. If anybody else would like to come forward and address the council, now is your opportunity. Alderman Kirby?
Yeah. Ms. Tierney, we received a letter today from a Carl Larkin. Does he represent the Ward 1 Residents Association? Okay.
Yes, that letter, the author of the letter represents
Okay.
we felt that we didn't need to testify, not knowing if Alderman Burke was here or not, but we need to read the letter out loud.
Oh, no, ma'am, we all received it today, and I think it's in the record. Okay, I just didn't know his association with the board and seeing you there. Okay, okay. And the other thing is, it's only on first reader. It's Alderman Budget's piece of legislation. So, and it's on the consent calendar. It will probably go on first reader tonight, but obviously there's going to be a lot of tweaking or a lot of discussions around it.
Yes, I do know in a separate cover we've received other letters from residents addressing
Thank you.
If there's anybody that would like to speak, last chance. Seeing no motion, I declare comments by the general public closed. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, next is an update from you.
All right, we had a lot going on this past month. So first of all, I want to congratulate the Annapolis Police Department on the most recent arrest and discovery of confiscation of handguns this last weekend. Normally don't go into detail, but I'm going to now to let you know about the work that they're doing. On October the 5th, Michael Mitchell, 37 of Annapolis, was arrested for armed robbery that occurred on September the 10th in the unit block of Chester Avenue. Mitchell was arrested in North Carolina by the United States Marshal Service. The Annapolis Police Department detectives received information that Mitchell fled Annapolis to North Carolina. The information was forwarded to the U.S. Marshal Service. So we have people going all over to find the criminals. If you commit a crime here and you leave, we will track you down no matter where you go. On October the 4th, I was part of the first conservation easement since 2003. So roughly one half of the property where the Bay Village Assisted Living will be developed is going into a conservation easement held by the Annapolis Conservancy. Once the project is completed, the easement will encompass 3 acres of forest and includes a small wetland area on the site. I'm grateful to the Annapolis Conservancy Board. Amongst others, I toured the property, and if you look back there was tires, trash, debris. It was basically an illegal dumping site that they're now going to clean up and keep in conservation easement. Also, during the week of the 26th, I was involved in building a boat at Chesapeake Lake Craft and Design. I was touring their facility on an economic development tour, and the owner, John Harris, was kind enough to donate a boat to the city of Annapolis. I spent a week constructing that boat, which will be donated to the city with a lot of civic organizations. Volunteered their time. I owed Boy Scout troop, people from the maritime industry. We had some students from the Center of Applied Technology, CAT South, all came in. So we probably put in 150, 200 hours worth of work, and there's probably another 100 or 200 hours left to go. So I want to thank everyone for that. Also, people I contacted in my office about the Parkside Preserve project. I went out there firsthand and toured the property. And after walking through and seeing the site, it didn't seem that the forest was in bad of condition as they said. So I talked with City Manager Tom Andrews, and we decided to have a DNR certified forester come out and take a look at it in the future. So if there's something wrong with the forest conservation plan, we're going to look at it. If there's a reason to appeal it, we will. The city can't act arbitrarily and just rip up plans for any reason, but if there's sufficient evidence to do so or misrepresentation, we will take the appropriate steps. Also, we had interviews for the harbor master last week, and just waiting on background checks, and the city manager and I plan to make that announcement this week. I also have interviews for the Hispanic liaison tomorrow and Wednesday, and we're hoping to finalize that week as well. We also went to the Annapolis Senior Center to celebrate their 10th anniversary at Wiley H. Bates. So it was a great time. If you've never been before, go down there. It's fantastic. Treat you like family. There was also a meeting at the Greater Pearl Community Association. I think it was extremely well done. We had all the department heads there, and basically about 80, 90 people came out, and they went from table to table talking about what we can do for the city. So I really enjoy the dialogue, and I want to thank everyone for coming out to that area. I also attended the 100th anniversary service dinner at Asbury United Methodist Church, and thanking the ushers for all the work that they do. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Pendle Charles.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. I was unable to be there due to a family matter. I was out of state, but we thank you so much for the Community Association attendance. One other thing, the last count that I got was 106 people at the meeting, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, next on the agenda is the consent calendar. There are some minutes to go over from a regular and special meeting, a grant and several first readers. There are 4 ordinances: forest conservation, bonded employees, sale of city-owned property, and extending hours in Parking District 3, and then 3 resolutions, 2 of which have to do with the last will and testament of our former colleague Dick Israel, and another one has to do with R3216, which is Alderman Budge's resolution for amending parking fines.
Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Second.
Any discussion? Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Panlady?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett? Alderwoman Kendall Charles?
Aye.
Alderwoman Langston?
Aye.
Alderman Littman?
Aye.
Alderman Kirby?
Aye.
Alderman Fraser?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is the appointment of John Dillon to the Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis.
All right. Mr. Dillon joining us in the background. And I know there'll be a motion on the floor briefly, but before we get to that, I just want to let the public know a little bit about Mr. Dillon and his qualifications for the job. Before I do, I want to thank all the members on the council. I know a number of you have taken the time to reach out to Mr. Dillon, talk with him, so I appreciate that. So Mr. John Dillon is a resident of Annapolis, and he's the founder and former president of Shurilis, a nonprofit organization in Los Angeles, California, responsible for empowering young men and women to find jobs and gain access to safe and affordable housing. It was named Nonprofit of the Year in 2012 and has purchased, financed, renovated, and managed affordable housing for low-income men and women, helping thousands find jobs in the Los Angeles area. Mr. Dillon worked with city officials and top LA law firms, business owners, and professionals to successfully complete these projects. During his 6 years in Los Angeles, Mr. Dillon lived in a homeless shelter and in a single-room occupancy hotel on Skid Row to better understand the needs of low-income individuals and elevated purchasing and renovating housing for low-income renters. So he wanted to see firsthand what it was like, decided to live in Skid Row to get firsthand perspective, and so I think that makes him extremely qualified for his personal sacrifice and knowledge of the challenges people face in our housing authority. John Dillon is a member of the Board of Directors for the Community Preservation and Development Corporation and has served as its finance chairman during his 20 years of the organization. The CPDC worked to provide safe, high-quality, affordable housing to low and moderate-income individuals and has renovated and operates the YLH-based Heritage Park Apartments. So I think local knowledge in terms of actually working on a project within the city, most of us have been to YLH-based and seen that, in addition to his financial experience, which we can say is lacking at best at the Housing Authority with the mismanaged money they're going to probably have to repay. Mr. Dillon is a current owner and president of a management firm located in Annapolis and Bethesda, which helps clients plan their financial future. I know Mr. Dillon is serious about this appointment. He's accepting the challenge, and he knows he'll be working with the HACA properties to deal with the challenges on a day-to-day basis. He leads by example, not only with his past knowledge to help our residents, but also his extensive financial and managerial experience to help the HACA administration create a financially sound environment for its day-to-day operations. And I'll just say I look forward to having him on the board very soon. Is there a motion from the floor? Alderman Kirby?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. All three members of the Housing Human Welfare Committee have those resumes, and I believe as well as the rest of the board, and we are very keenly aware of some of the problems that the Housing Authority has been through these last couple of years, or last couple of months in particular. However, appointments of this magnitude needs to come before the Housing Human Welfare Committee. They shouldn't be circumvented. And I think that we are all in agreement. He's discussed it with Alderman Budge. He has not spoken with the other two members, each of us whom think that he's uniquely qualified to help the situation at the Housing Authority. The simple fact is that we need him to come before the Housing Human Welfare Committee this month. I think we also knew that a decision was made last month, so he could have been approved last month, but that meeting ended up being canceled. But if I recollect now through reading other people who was on the board, that decision was made in time for Mr. Dillon to appear at the meeting last month. And I don't want to hold it any longer. I think that he will be confirmed. I don't think there'll be any issues at all. I still just think protocol calls for him to come before Housing and Welfare Committee. So I'm asking for a postponement tonight.
Not a problem. Can you give us assurances that he'll be taken up at the next human? All right. Perfect. Is there a second? Any discussion? Alderman Arnett?
I've met with Mr. Dillon several times, and as it happens, he's a constituent, and I've been very impressed and very anxious for him to get on the Housing Authority Board. But I agree with Alderman Kirby that we have processes that we need to follow, otherwise we have no rules. So I support the motion to postpone, even though I really want him to get to work for us.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, next are public hearings. The first one is a continuation of a public hearing on 03616, which is the ordinance regarding the absentee ballot application.
Nobody was signed up in advance to speak. If you'd like to address the council, now is your opportunity. Seeing no motion, I declare we'll keep the public hearing open until the next meeting in October. There were some emails that had come in and concern from citizens that wanted to talk on this issue. I know, Alderman Arnett, it was scheduled for a vote today and you wanted to hold it off till it went to committee, just like we did with Mr. Dillon. So we'll leave the public hearing open until people can come.
Can we have the committee meeting before the public hearing is closed? I don't think so. No. So it would be nice if we could close it and have we can take into advisement the correspondence from the people who couldn't be here tonight, but I think we postponed this already one council meeting. I would prefer that we close the public hearing so we can get it to committee tomorrow.
I understand, but as we just saw with Mr. Dillon, there was a lot of people that wanted to come by and talk about it, so we're going to leave the public hearing open.
Come on down tomorrow.
All right. Mr. City Attorney,
Okay,
please present the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next is a public hearing on 04316, which has to do with the issuance of a general obligation refunding bond.
There's nobody signed up in advance to speak. If you'd like to address the council, now is your opportunity. Seeing no motion, I declare the public hearing on 04316 closed. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Next is another ordinance 04416 regarding the issuance of general obligation bonds.
Nobody was signed up. If you'd like to talk to the council, now is your chance. Seeing no motions, I declare the public hearing on 04416 closed. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Next is the first of second readers, the 03016, which has to do with supplemental allocations authorizing the city manager to transfer funds in the annual operating budget without city council approval in amounts that don't exceed $35,000 through July 1st, 2018.
Is there a motion to adopt 03016 on second reader?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is that a second, Alderman Lippman? Yes. Okay. I believe there's proposed amendments from the Finance Committee, so I will let the sponsor speak to those at this time.
So I'm looking for, first of all, I chaired that Finance Committee meeting. We had several amendments, and I can't find them in the package here, but one was to reduce the amount to $25,000 from $35,000, and then to add a section. Actually, we revised the whole section on page 2 to further restrict the flexibility in terms of no monies from the contingency fund of any amount. All monies coming from the contingency fund of any amount would have to come before the Finance Committee, and also no funds from the bond fund would be transferred without review by the Finance Committee and then go on to the council for approval.
Alderman Pfeiffer.
Mr. Mayor, I would just say I was not able to attend that meeting of the Finance Committee, so Alderman Payon and Alderman Arnett came up with these amendments, which, from my perspective, makes sense. I think I was a sponsor of the underlying bill. It was born out of the annual budget process, and sometimes we spend a lot of time in the Finance Committee getting down on in the weeds on sort of very small dollar amounts. So there was a desire to have a little more flexibility from the city manager's part, and I think the amendments are then an effort to take that flexibility and sort of put some parameters on them. And so I think with the amendments, I think it strengthens the underlying bill and sort of does what we would like to do. So it looked like Alderman Arnett was having trouble pulling it up, but for the benefit of everyone else, so there are 3 amendments from the Finance Committee listed in your packet. One is, as you said, the first amendment basically lowers the dollar amount from $35,000 to $25,000. The second adds a sort of a review component that the department head shall submit a request in writing to the finance director. Once reviewed, the finance director shall forward the request to the city manager and the mayor for consideration. And amendment number 3 talks about all monies transferred from bond funds or contingency funds must be reviewed by the Finance Committee. So keeping one type of transfer, because those are such sort of specialized lanes that the Finance Committee deals in, sort of keeping the old process in place there. So I'm happy to move all 3 amendments unless there's interest in talking about anyone separately. But I'd move approval of Amendment 1, 2, and 3 of the Finance Committee package.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Alderman Lippman?
Just a grammar thing, if you could help me on this. Amendment number 2, sentence that says once reviewed, shouldn't that be where reviewed is getting changed to approved? Shouldn't that be if approved, then the finance, and not presume that the finance director is going to approve?
May I?
Please.
The discussion was whether the finance director should give another director permission. So the committee was very deliberate in changing it from approved to review. So to add if would suggest that the responsibility for approval falls with the finance director.
I agree that the reviewed changing to approved, but should once be changed to if? That's what I'm suggesting.
If reviewed.
If approved.
No, it's not approved, it's reviewed.
You have the amendment changes reviewed to approved.
No.
The other way around.
Oh, the other way around.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize. Yep. I misread it. I understand now. I'm good.
All in favor of the amendments, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Is there a motion to adopt 03016 as amended on second reader?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Is there a motion to adopt 03016 on third reader? Is there a second?
Second.
Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Panlady?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
No.
Alderman Pinnell Charles?
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Lippman?
Aye.
Alderman Kirby?
Aye.
Alderman Pfeiffer?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, the next second reading on the agenda is 03616, having to do with the absentee ballot application, which was discussed earlier tonight.
Didn't we postpone this?
You left the public hearing open, but we're postponing the second reader action.
All right. Is there a motion to postpone 03616 until the second regular meeting, special meeting on the Monday, October the 24th, 2016?
Move to postpone.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Next is the final second reader, Mr. Mayor, R2916, regarding the establishment of a council compensation commission.
Is there a motion to adopt R2916 on second reader?
So moved.
Is there Second? Any discussion? Oh, there's an amendment. Is there a motion to amend R 2916 on second reader?
So moved.
Is there a second?
And
Anyone?
second. And is the intent of the amendment is to add the names, basically, of the people?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, they're in there. It's about third paragraph down.
Any discussion?
Sounds like a good list of folks.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Is there a motion to adopt R 2916 as amended on second reader? Is there a second? Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Panlady?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett? Aye. Alderwoman Kendall Charles?
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Littman?
Aye.
Alderman Kirby?
Aye.
Alderman Pfeiffer?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney?
Mr. Mayor, next item is adjournment.
I don't know.
Fred, no,
Can he call? Can he vote by phone? Can we call in there and?
Mr. Mayor, I move for adjournment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned.